Hello and welcome to today's session where I will be introducing communication skills. This session is one of two sessions. The following one next week will look predominantly into barriers around effective communication. But today we're going to look at communication skills and what enhances our ability to communicate. Making a link to policy, which we looked at a previous session, the Common Core Skills of the Children's Workforce outlines the need for all practitioners that work with children, young people and their families to have effective communication. And in the presentation which is hosted alongside this video, you can click on the link which will take you to this page where effective communication skills and knowledge are outlined. And you can read that in your own time in order to understand how government policy has identified the need for practitioners to have effective communication skills. In order to communicate effectively with any client group, whether they're children or adults, we need to be able to establish and build rapport. Here's a definition of rapport. It's the ability for us to make a connection which is harmonious or sympathetic to the needs of other people. And in many social relationships that we form informally, this process of building rapport almost happens on an unconscious level. However, today we're going to be unpicking some of the techniques that we can use in order to better facilitate rapport. In order to build rapport, we need an awareness of ourselves and also an awareness of other people. And a good starting point is for us to become self-aware. What sort of a person are we when it comes to building and forming relationships with others? Most of the theory surrounding attachment has focused on the relationships that children and young children have. And basically, Bowlby said that the first types of relationship that we have when we're children influences the type of relationship that we have in later life. And this theory was expanded by the work of Hazen and Shaver in 1987, who acknowledged that adults have a preferred type of attachment style. And they distinguished between 4 different types of attachment. And you can look at these in more detail in the other presentation, but for completeness I'm going to whiz through them very quickly now. There are individuals as adults that have ambivalent attachments, avoidant attachments, disorganized attachments, which are rare and the result of chaotic experiences whilst growing up, and finally the preferable one, which is the secure attachment. And I'd like to draw your attention to point 4 in the adult attachment sector. Being securely attached doesn't mean that the individual doesn't need to seek out help on occasion. The important message here is that securely attached individuals are aware of when they need to seek out help and social support. Within the presentation, which sits alongside this video on Moodle, you're requested to click on the following video, which lasts for about 3 minutes, and try and make some sense about what is going on. It's important to watch the video without any sound. How much is being communicated non-verbally? Hopefully, the wealth of meaning that you noted from watching that short clip demonstrates how much of our communication is actually non-verbal. Albert Mehrabian developed this theory that 55% of our communication is based on body language and posture and gestures and so on. That is how we act and behave. 38% of our communication is based on tone of voice and how we actually say something, whilst only 7% of what we communicate is a result of what we actually say, the content of our speech. Therefore, it's important for us to reflect on, whenever we're communicating, what is our body language saying about us? What is our tone of voice communicating? And to be less hung up, perhaps, on what content we are actually discussing. Furthermore, the work of Paul Ekman suggests that we are hardwired to intuitively read social situations with high levels of accuracy. And what Ekman found was that people were able to judge a situation very, very quickly. And there was an exercise within this page on Moodle where you were requested to quickly identify which emotion each of the 7 faces is showing. It's important to acknowledge that our communication skills and abilities are fundamental in building relationships, not only on a social or personal level, but also in a professional capacity when we're working with children, young people, and families. As well as being able to read a social situation visually quite accurately, as Ekman suggests, there are also methods that we can use in order to more effectively hear a social situation. And Egan, in his 1994 book, The Skilled Helper, identifies that active listening can better help us interpret social situations. And Egan identifies 4 main areas that practitioners should listen out for whilst engaged in active listening. Firstly, we should listen to the experiences that people are telling us. What is happening? What are the details of the experience? Also, we should listen to where they are located within the experience. What are they doing? What is their behaviour? What is it that they are doing, or in some cases not doing? What is their response, their actions? We can also pay attention to their effect, the feelings that arise from those experiences and those behaviours. So what sort of words is the person using that tell us how they are feeling about the situation? And finally, what is the speaker's point of view? What is their overall view, if you like, or summary about the experience, behaviour and feelings? As well as effectively listening, and we've just seen Egan describe the active listening process, we can also influence interactions by effective questioning. And simplistically, we might think that questioning is a simple skill. However, Nancy Friedman identifies that there are at least 9 different types of questioning skills. Each one is likely to bring about a different outcome. So as well as the more complex skill of active listening, Friedman's work identifies that actual questioning can be more complex than we first thought. When is a reflective question effective, for example? Are multiple questions ever effective? And so to sum up, the building of professional relationships is different to making social relationships. A distinction that I have tried to live by as a practitioner is that in professional relationships one can be friendly, but one is not friends. The work of Ekman demonstrates that we form judgments about people very, very quickly based on physical characteristics. Morabian shows that the vast majority of communication is based on non-verbal information. 93% of our communication is non-verbal. Unlike social relationships that tend to occur naturally or by chance, professional relationships have different expectations, including a higher level of responsibility placed on professionals. Unlike personal relationships, which tend to be characterised by a 50-50 or a give and take arrangement, much more onus is placed on the professional within professional relationships. Therefore, it is usually up to the professional, i.e. you, to instigate communication and maintain and build rapport, often with very little input from the client group. And this links in with what was said in an earlier lecture, that working with children, young people and families is emotional work. It remains to be emotional work because, unlike most personal relationships, we might have to build and maintain relationships with many people we do not actually like. Not liking a person should not influence the level of service that they can expect from us. Therefore, guidance and legislation exists around diversity and equality, which states that those we work with must receive a fair service. We cannot discriminate simply because we do not like the client. It's worth noting at this point that in reality, relationships are not governed by policy documents such as diversity and equality. Although they can be influential, out there in the field, one has to rely on a consistent and ethical value base which influences our practice whilst we think on our feet. Quite simply, we cannot keep turning to the pages of a policy document to ascertain whether or not we are communicating and building rapport effectively. We have to rely on an internalised value base. Egan has analysed effective listening and the 4 features of engaging in active listening. You might practice these skills in everyday conversation by focusing on the speaker's experience, their behaviour, their feelings, and their points of view. So that gives us more scope to understand what the speaker is saying. Friedman also gives us another tool of 9 different questioning styles which we might employ when communicating with people. Reflect on these styles. Do you tend to use one of the styles more than the others? Are there other styles which you might develop and might be more effective in certain situations? Thank you, and next week we'll be looking in more detail about what some of the barriers to effective communication might be.